What has happened to bowling in Las Vegas? If you talk to any Vegas local who was around 20 to 30 years ago, they will have many stories about the bowling scene there and just how incredible the action was. Recently, it seems like the tournament scene in Vegas has really been struggling. Numbers are way down, tournaments are getting cancelled. Now, I want to make it clear that I love bowling in Vegas. I think there's a lot of good points, but the things I'm going to talk about are just observations made not only by myself, but also a lot of Vegas locals. The main reason I wanted to make this video is to get a discussion going. I want to hear from bowlers in Vegas. I want to know their opinions on the current tournament scene and why you think many are struggling for numbers. So what exactly has been happening? How have things changed and what might be the cause? That's what I'll be discussing in this video. Let's start by quickly talking about what bowling in Vegas used to be like. Unfortunately, I'm not anywhere near old enough to have been around in its heyday. I first visited around 2015, so I didn't get to see it in its prime, but I've spoken to some of the long-time locals and the stories they told are very interesting. You would have tournaments full of 60 plus lanes, basically full from morning till night, an incredible amount of action, and also a thriving scratch and high roller scene. It was just non-stop action. But let's talk about the state of bowling in Vegas right now, and I want to start mainly with the tournament scene specifically. It seems like many tournaments are really struggling to get the numbers, and it seems to be the local tournaments that are suffering. Big tournaments like the TAT and ABT Nationals are doing very well, particularly the TAT, which is growing each year. But when you're offering up such high first place prizes, you're always going to get bowlers from all over come and play. The TAT gives out, I think it's 25,000 first place prize. The ABT normally gives out around 10,000 for their national tournaments, but in February 2026, they're actually giving away $30,000 as a first place prize. That means you're always going to get more than enough players turn up for that sort of money, particularly as they're aimed at amateurs, so really anybody has a shot at winning. When you look at some of the smaller, more regular tournaments that offer up around $2,000 on average as a first place prize, these are the ones that seem to be struggling. They are typically singles tournaments and they're guaranteeing between $1,000 to $2,000, yet they're struggling to get the numbers. This surprises me because I would have thought for that sort of money, a one-day tournament, bowlers would come out and play. I was out in Vegas recently for the last couple of months and I saw a big difference in the numbers during my trip. Sometimes tournaments were barely getting 20 people show up, despite having a pretty good prize for a local tournament. Plus there was tournaments getting cancelled, and it seems like this has been an ongoing problem because a few organisers had to stop guaranteeing the first place prize as they were just losing money. And these are well-run tournaments, a lot of which are played on difficult patterns, on sports shots. And I think the payout for a local tournament is good, and I think it obviously has the potential to be even better. And I think in there we have a partial answer as to why the numbers in local tournaments have dropped. From what I've experienced, the majority of singles tournaments are played on difficult conditions. There are no house shots used, that's for sure. There's a lot of sports shots being put down now, and I think the patterns used are definitely harder than they used to be. And that's across the board, but I think it actually started from some of the larger tournaments. For example, the TAT, I can remember a few years ago, the shot at the TAT was definitely easier. It wasn't easy, it wasn't a house shot, but they've definitely made it tougher in the last couple of years. And that's a good thing in my opinion. It should be a challenge. But I can see that has translated to the local tournaments, and they're actually putting down a lot harder patterns. And I think it could be putting players off from participating. Personally, I love bowling on tough shots because I think it makes it fair. I also enjoy the challenge, but there's many others who don't share that opinion. And I just wonder how many have played some of these local tournaments, bowled really badly, and then just not come back. There's a lot of league guys who only play on house shots and they cannot bowl on sports patterns, and many of them just give up and then don't bother to enter the tournaments. I think this could be part of the reason, because I just know what some bowlers are like. They don't like bowling bad, and some of the tournaments I bowled in Vegas recently, the lanes did play tough. I mean, even that tournament held in November where the first place prize, it's 4,000, but it included an entry to the 2026 USBC Masters. The scores there were incredibly low. I didn't get a chance to play that one, unfortunately, but Darren Tang did make a video about that, about how difficult it was. So I think it does seem to be the trend that the patterns have got harder. The scores, I do think, are more modest than perhaps they used to be. Of course, not in all tournaments, but I think there has been a change. It's not the main reason, but I think it plays a part. If you ask me to name what the main reason is, I'd probably have to say money. I don't think a lot of people have the money to play a great deal of tournaments, and bowling a tournament in Vegas isn't as simple as just paying $80 to $100 for your entry. You've got side pots, first place prize, bonus pots, brackets, sweepers, and all of this can quickly add up. You can easily be spending out $200 to $300 when you factor everything in if you do want to play the side action. When you add in a re-entry as well, suddenly it doesn't become so attractive. Yes, the first place prize might be decent for a one-day local tournament, but you're relying then on picking up some cash from the side pots and brackets and then making the cut to try and at least break even. Often because the numbers aren't there, yes, you'll have a decent first place and maybe a second place prize, but making the cut, you don't even really get your entry back. And that's just a catch-22 because you're just not getting the numbers and therefore you're not going to have a good payout across the board. And then it makes me wonder if a lot of this started during the 2008 recession. Since then, it feels like everyone has been struggling, and of course, things haven't improved. The cost of living crisis hit and it's only made things harder for people. I think people will pay money for a couple of big tournaments a year. Paying out $400 to $500 for a few entries in the TAT or the ABT is justifiable when you're playing for a big first place prize. And using the TAT again as an example, it's a very good payout once you actually make the cut. But trying to justify paying out, even a couple of $100 each weekend at a local tournament is harder for some. Another thing that shows just how much Vegas has changed is the complete lack of scratch bowling and the high roller scene. It just seems to have disappeared. And to be honest, I don't know enough about the history of the high roller scene to say why that might be. Perhaps any Vegas locals could let me know more about that. But whatever the reason, it just seems to have dried up. Because as good as the TAT and ABT tournaments are, they are all handicapped. There just doesn't seem to be the demand for big scratch tournaments anymore. But let's now look at the good points of Vegas, because it's not all bad. Which tournaments are doing well? Well, as I said, any big handicap amateur tournaments are doing very well, but also tournaments that have a strong community and a strong following behind them are doing well. Tournaments like the Big Kahuna or the Asian Pacific Islander. These tournaments seem to always get good numbers, and I think partly it's because they are team tournaments and it seems players are more likely to play a team event than a singles for some reason, but it's down to the fact I think that these are well-liked and well-run tournaments that have a very strong following. I think bowlers in Vegas might be a little bit picky about which organisers they decide to give their money to, and I get it. I think it's very hard to set up a new tour or tournament now. Not saying it can't be done, but you have to make sure you're doing it well because word seems to get around quickly. I think that's why tournaments like the API and Big Kahuna do well so consistently as well, because they've built up a good reputation. Another good point about Vegas is, of course, league bowling. There's not really anything bad to say about it. It's thriving. Now again, maybe someone out there can tell me if league bowling in Vegas used to be even bigger. But from what I've heard, there's so much demand at the moment that leagues are basically full. From what I understand, South Point, for example, you can't really get a team in. Your best bet is to try and join one. Vegas seems to have a very strong league scene, but those league players don't seem to be participating in tournaments as much as they probably should. Some of it as well, I think, is confidence. They don't have belief in their abilities. They think they have no chance. Well, I completely disagree, because a lot of these tournaments are set up to give anybody a chance to win. But for some reason, they don't seem to be particularly interested in bowling tournaments. To summarize all of this, I think bowling in Vegas is in a strange place right now. The really big amateur tournaments seem to be thriving, as are leagues, but the local tournament scene seems to be quickly dying. And as I mentioned at the start of the video, the point of this is really to open this up as a bit of a discussion. I've spoken about a couple of reasons that are off the top of my head from what I can see, but I'm sure there are other reasons as well, and I'd love to know what you think. What are your thoughts about bowling in Vegas, specifically the tournament scene, and why do you think some tournaments have been struggling to get the numbers? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I hope you have enjoyed this video, and if you have, I'd really appreciate it if you would hit the subscribe button below. Well, that is going to do it from me for today, and as always, thank you bowling fans, and see you all next time.